Interchange can be a massive honeypot, whether it's graphics cards at 1.7 mil or Tetris with the crazy price of Bitcoin. The thing about this map is a lot of your deaths come from spawn fights, so let's talk about those spawn fights and how to survive them more often. Before we get into this video, if you want to catch me on Interchange or ask any questions about any of the videos, I will be streaming live. The link for that will be featured down in the description below if you want to swing by. Starting off at one of the most common spawns on Interchange, we're here over at Emercom, and you can see those flags in the middle of the roundabout. Now, this place actually has a lot more going on than you realize, and not only does OLI have a lot of good loot, and it's also the path to get to the tech stores, but a lot of spawns around here actually clash. You can see directly to the left of the main Emercom spawn here over at Hole and Fence is a parked fuel tanker, and people can actually run along this spawn directly towards OLI and will actually run into your path. This is actually made worse by the fact that there's a little trailer park after that where someone else can also spawn. So there's a lot of fights that happen around this area and congestion getting into OLI. An example of me spawning in the furthest corner here, you can actually see someone got the trailer park spawn and ran straight up OLI ramp. And I was actually about 5 to 10 seconds into this raid. So that's crazy that that guy could even be on that ramp. But when I push up, obviously I'm scanning down towards the fuel tanker to make sure there isn't another spawn. But this is actually quite common. Now it gets worse because there's actually a spawn here on the right hand side of the ramp, and you only ever get this spawn if you are actually late. Now this is a weird spawn because if you get this spawn, what can happen is, especially if you are late, even though they've said they fixed late spawns, you can have this marker in blue just above it that can actually run to the ramp before you or at the same time. You've also got another spawn to the left of that trailer park spawn that can happen, and people can be running from here towards the ramp, which means you can have 3 spawns within less than 100 meters of each other at the start of the raid. You can also get one further down towards Hole and Fence, and it's alternating between the trailer park in this certain scenario, so you do have to be worried about that area as well. What this looks like in action is me spawning here about 5 to 8 seconds late, and as you can see, as soon as I start running, I start to see someone already running up OLI ramp. While I'm shooting at the guy running up OLI ramp, he gets shot at from trailer park by an M1A. This is crazy that 3 spawns within each other in the first couple seconds, and this is a very dangerous spawn. Moving away from this spawn and coming further down towards the highway, let's talk about one of the most common spawn fights in the game, and that's at the front of OLI. Coming from the main highway here, they either usually go for front ultra or the front of OLI. But the problem with this spawn is there are 3 spawns nearby that can actually clash. The main one is at the very end of the highway here, which has to run one of the furthest distances to get inside the mall to the front OLI. You can see I'm running past 21WS here. Now these 2 spawns clash way more than you realize, because sometimes the person on the highway would like to go towards front ultra to try and get killer or whatever they may be planning. There's a lot of fighting here, especially at the front of OLI. Now you can see I've got the highway spawn and I'm scanning on my right to make sure no one's past 21WS. So as I start to run up across this main area, I'm obviously worried about that team on my right towards 21WS. But when I get to the divider, I start to notice people near the stage, and this is our highway 3-man. So basically what's happened is the team has spawned on the highway, and they're going straight towards OLI for that Texo and also Tech Light and all that awesome tech loot. If we look at the map, that spawn about 21WS is actually moving in at the exact same time because they want the tech as well. And usually they'll be coming from underneath the car park or sometimes rarely along the front. If they decide to do either of these 2 things, you'll get a clash. And you can see I have a perfect example of it with another 2-man rocking up to fight the 3-man. But eventually this fight unfolded inside OLI at the main stairs. But you can just see the congestion that happens around this area. So as you can see, I'm actually further on the highway here, actually deeper away from that first spawn I got just before. But the principle still remains. You can still have people on your far right and also along your left. You will still get the highway spawn. I'm actually trying to go for front ultra for killer, but you start to notice the 2-man that have been running from the highway and are heading towards stage. Now this is an incredibly common spawn fight if you happen to get away from here ASAP. Now this is usually caused by OLI being really incredibly hot, and that price of graphics cards has caused the map to change significantly. Spawns like these guys would actually have a much better chance going towards the front ultra, but a lot of them have been heading closer towards me as the spawn that I got because OLI is on my right and a lot of people want those graphics cards. Now, this is probably one of the second most common spawn fights in the game, and this one is pretty devastating. As you can see, I'm just past the highway at one of the hidden stashes, and usually when you get the spawn, you're going to run straight towards front ultra, or sometimes idea or under the car park. If you do either of these two things, you need to be wary of this spawn on the left at the pipe. Now, these two spawns are always next to each other, and one of the most common spawn fights that I've seen. Basically, this blue marker will either head towards the racetracks, or they'll cut right and start heading towards front ultra, which is usually what I do if I need killer. Now, the problem with this is that there are two sides to the coin here. As you can see, as I'm jumping over the rail, I actually spot a hatchling running towards either front ultra or obviously idea. Now, this is common, and you can actually get really geared players doing this. You don't really want to expose yourself. Now, obviously, I've decided to keep on running and ignore him because I believe he's a hatchling, and I'm obviously going for killer. But this is really common, because if I was in the place of the hatchling, it would happen the exact same way. Let me show this in action. So you can see I'm where the hatchling was before, and I'm jumping across the bridge. Now, in this certain scenario, I always run an SJ6, that blue stim. This actually allows me to have a lot more stamina and cover a lot more ground when I spawn, especially when I get the terrible spawns on the outer edges of the map. As I push across the highway and start to push along towards front ultra, I'm actually farming killer in this video, so that's why I'm heading towards it. When I get about halfway, I start to hear some footsteps on my right, and lo and behold, the spawn that I talked about earlier that I got decided to run hard left and cut off my spawn as fast as possible. Now, this obviously didn't work out perfectly for this guy, but it can happen a lot of the time, so be wary in this situation. You can see once again I'm in the same spawn, and this is a couple raids later, and you can see I am actually scanning towards my right and notice someone who got that spawn along the highway and are directly running to front ultra. Now, this is incredibly common, and when you're in your raids, be wary of people shooting you from here and vice versa, as this happens a lot and results in a lot of my deaths on Interchange. The last spawn fight in this video is also one of the most common, and it definitely needs to be pointed out. There's a spawn here at the power station where a lot of the time people run straight up idea ramp and into idea and not worry about it. A lot of the time they will go check the power station, and sometimes they usually push along for the stashes. Now, this is a problem because there's a spawn here at Hole in Fence, which is that parked fuel tanker here where a spawn is. And that spawn usually likes to push towards power station, either to turn the power on, look for the tech loot, or do the stashes. Now, this is not guaranteed, but this exact spawn fight has happened to me numerous amount of times. And because a lot of the time people are coming to power station for that tech loot, you'll see people move along this wall, and you can see I actually ran into a 3-man here, which were coming along for the stashes, is my understanding. Now, this was actually within the first 15 seconds of the raid. And I had pushed straight up to idea ramp to actually head inside when I noticed them walking along the left wall. Obviously, I went and hunted them down, and I felt really bad because they were quite a low-level 3-man, and I ended up tossing their gear. But this just goes to show some of the worst spawns on this map. And you do really need to be careful if you are in the same situation as this 3-man. Hey guys, that's it for this video. If you learned anything about the spawns, hopefully this helps you guys survive more raids. If there's a map you'd like to see me do next, feel free to subscribe and let me know in the comments down below what that map will be. I always do read the comments, and I really do appreciate the support on there. Thanks so much for watching to the very end. And as always, we'll see you on the next one.